ArtTech is co-hosting today's conversation with CultTech Accelerator in Vienna, and to answer all of your questions and our questions on this important topic, and to know more about the perspectives of business investors as well as the needs for entrepreneurs, let me introduce today's speakers. So on the investment side, Ulli Stevens, who is entrepreneur and business angel. She launched an internet gallery in 2001, the very first in Germany, as well as contemporary art galleries in Frankfurt and New York. She also manages the relationships between CultTech and its financial supporters. Also with us is Severin Zugmayer, founder of New Renaissance Ventures, which is the first dedicated venture fund for the cultural and creative industries. The fund invests in the most ambitious tech creators across Europe. And the startups will be represented today by Dr. Carina Popovici, CEO and co-founder of Art Recognition based in Zurich. It's one of the few women-led startups in the art market, which operates at the forefront of artificial technology. Carina holds a PhD in theoretical physics from the University of Tübingen and also worked as a risk specialist in the banking industry. And Marco Cappellini, CEO and co-founder of Artcentrica. Marco has 25 years experience in art and technology as an electronic engineer. In 1999, he co-founded Centrica, a digital company that creates immersive exhibitions, and has been its CEO since its creation. Additionally, he co-founded in 2022 the Artcentrica EdTech startup, which has received numerous awards. Also with us is Alejandro Prieto, who is the program manager at CultTech, and Alejandro will manage the technical side of today's event. And let me also introduce Sarah Luiz, who is the program and community lead of the Accelerator. So let's start with you, Sarah, and can you tell us a little bit more about CultTech?
Yeah, sure. Let me just share my screen. I can still see everyone. Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining today. We're excited to be part of this panel. And yeah, we are the CultTech Accelerator. We're on our 5th batch since launching this 3 years ago. And what does CultTech? It's the intersection of culture and technology for the benefit of society. So we are advancing innovations and building sustainable businesses that make culture more accessible, engaging. I think there's someone's, I can hear some background noise, sorry. Engaging and financially rewarding for all. And so we have, this year we have 17 teams joining the cohort, and everybody, or each one of those teams is working towards the same mission. And it's a really special energy, lots of creatives and technical people putting together and sharing their journey to build impact in CultTech. So if I just quickly explain the program. So these are our focus areas, because culture can mean so many things. But since we've launched, these are the networks that we have, that we're more stronger. But it's not to say that it's confined to these focus areas. We're building on it all the time. Some really exciting innovations are coming through. So yeah, if anybody has an innovation in this area, please just visit the website, express your interest, and we will notify you when applications are open. And then if you are interested in the program, we kind of have 3 different areas that we take you through. The first one is networking communications. At this stage, it's very difficult to understand your innovation. We get you pitch perfect so that you're ready to present in front of investors and clients. We also go through a business validation process with you, because a lot of your ideas are very idealistic, and we literally take you through a journey so that you are credible in front of investors. And then that leads on to the fundraising strategy. Yes, we all like VCs, but that might not be the right route for you. So we really look at your strategy and make sure that you're going to be growing and scaling it the right way. And this all leads to our demo day in November. We meet in person twice, at the beginning of the program and at the end of the program. Yeah, this year we're really exciting, because we are having demo day as part of our new CultTech Summit in Vienna. And this is where all the startups will be presenting in front of investors, in front of everybody that's joining. I highly recommend it. It's going to be really exciting, because what culture does is very entertaining and make sure that we're not a boring conference. We're adding some excitement to this. So yeah, I've just left the QR code there. Please, yeah, get a ticket, come along, because I think it's going to be really exciting this year. And I think that's my time before we move to the next thing.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we're going to have a Q&A session, obviously, that's going to last probably around 35, 40 minutes. But before that, I'd like our panelists to say a few words so you know a little bit more about their company and what they do. So let's start with you, Ulli. You're involved in investor relations at CultTech. You just started a few months ago. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role and why you got involved with CultTech?
Yeah, I'm Ulrike, short Ulli, and yeah, I grew up in Germany and have a background in business management. And as you said before, very early on, I dived into the startup scene, and it was 2000, in the 2000s, the .com boom, and I launched that internet gallery, and it was the very first one in Germany. And yeah, timing, startups know that, is everything. And back in 2001, it was definitely not easy to sell art online. So that led to my contemporary art galleries in Frankfurt, New York. And I did that for almost 10 years and I loved it. But it was not very compatible with a family. So I lived north of New York for over 10 years with my husband and my kids. And in COVID 2020, we wanted to be close to family and came to Germany. And we were locked down, so I did what I always do. I researched startups, and I got involved in the local startup scene in Europe and networked with angel investors. And then I was speaking to PF, who is on the board of CultTech, and he asked me if I wanted to get involved and be part of the CultTech movement. And it's kind of infusing my passion for technology, for culture / arts, for investing, for startups. So it serves everything I've done in the past. So last year I was first a mentor, and then now I help with investor relations. And as we know, new technologies like AI or XR or blockchain, they change everything also in this space. And it's really, really interesting to see how it's empowering, on the one side, the creators, but also the consumers. So as I love to support ambitious founders, I thought, yes, I go for it. And so my role is basically to get the investors, the angel investors, excited about this space, the cultural and the creativity space. And it's a bigger market that you might imagine. It's not only NFTs, or it's you can think of many big startups like from the creativity side, Figma or Canva, up to Netflix and Spotify. So I try to win them over for this interesting field.
Okay. And Severin, you are also sort of on the investment side of the panel today. So you have a fund which is a first, if I'm not mistaken. It's a first one in the ArtTech world. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, welcome everyone. Real pleasure to be on this panel today. So quickly on my side, I'm Severin. I'm Austrian actually, and launched New Renaissance Ventures. That's the name of the fund last year, with the sole focus on tech startups in the cultural and creative industries. So in an ideal world, let's say the most successful companies, or let's say the VC scalable companies out of accelerators like the CultTech Accelerator are then a typical target for me. So the fund invests across Europe in the early stages in tech startups in these verticals. And this really goes from music to visual and applied arts, performing arts, but also new media and topics like gaming. So it's quite broad. It's actually business sector or business model agnostic. We look at both B2C and B2B models. But what's been really interesting for us, or what's driving most of our thesis is the mass adoption of emerging technologies, obviously most notably AI, but also AR, VR, or blockchain. And yeah, the fund launched last year. We are closing investment number 8 as we speak, and typically writing checks around 100 to 500K. And why are we doing this? I mean, I've been in the venture ecosystem for the last 7 years, before the career at Red Bull and Google, and in the venture realized there's funds for all kind of verticals, right? You will find health tech funds, you will find fintech funds, climate funds, and it's all very important that they exist. But no one really carved out the creative industries as a separate category. But I very much believe that there is potential to build a venture brand or venture fund with a sole focus on that topic. And if you look at the portfolios of the big funds out there, and be it Sequoia, Index, or Excel, you will note that roughly 8 to 10% of the portfolio companies are actually can be categorized as companies in the cultural and creative industries. So yeah, I think it's in my opinion a no-brainer that you can build a VC fund and a VC brand and a go-to fund for tech startups in those verticals here in Europe, and eventually also globally.
Okay, thank you, Severin. And we will now hear from our 2 CEOs and their startups. So let's start with you, Carina. Tell us a bit more about art recognition.
Gladly. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much to the organizers for having me on this panel today. So at Art Recognition, we have developed an AI system that can authenticate artworks, but also detect forgeries. The company has been created in 2019, so long before the AI revolution as we know it today, with the mission of increasing the transparency and the objectivity on the art market by establishing artificial intelligence as a new, purely technological-based standard for art authentication. We are committed to preserve the value of the artworks, but also to protect the interests of buyers and sellers, so the art enthusiasts that are actually trading art. Our service is, very precise, but also extremely fast, accessible, affordable, all while maintaining, of course, the highest quality standards. From the point of view of a client, the process is very, very simple. So the client just needs to upload a photograph of their artwork on our web platform. Then our AI runs the analysis, and in 2-3 weeks, the client receives an encrypted certificate and sometimes the report, so some more detailed information. This type of service has some clear advantages over the traditional process as we know it, which heavily relies on the human expertise. So the humans, as we know, they are subject to some natural errors, but the biggest problem is the subjectivity. So the fact that the art experts, they are known to have opinions that may or may not be justified. Often their verdicts disagree with each other. So this is a very big problem actually on this market. And the fact that we offer an objective technology-based authentication result is a massive advantage. And there are also some practical benefits. For example, the fact that, for the process, we just need a photograph. So whereas the human connoisseurs, they require the art piece in original. So one has to ship them really to them, and has to pay for the transport, the insurance. So all of this cost disappears. Like I said, we started 5 years ago as a duo of founders, 2 women for that matter. Meanwhile, we have a team of 8. So we've been growing. We are serving clients really worldwide, so mostly private collectors, but also some galleries, consultancies, auction houses. So we have a very diverse client base.
Thank you, Carina. And Marco, you will be the last one to present your work. You are CEO since 1999 of Artcentrica as well as of Artcentrica, and you recently co-founded another company, Artcentrica sorry, I forgot the last bit. But anyways, tell us a bit more. You sound like a very busy man who has been creating a lot of startups.
Thank you, Muriel, and very glad to be here. Yes, it's correct. I founded in 1999 this company called Artcentrica, and since then we are devoted to digital technologies and art, especially from high-res digitization in museums and in other cultural institutions to the creation of immersive experiences that are also traveling experiences. For example, last year we were in China, in Beijing, with an experience called Renaissance experience, so something in common with Severin. And regarding Artcentrica comes from all the know-how, assets, and experiences that we have done in all these years. And we thought that it was needed some new service and approach for bringing art to the education system, so to schools and universities. And so we have started the project as an internal project of Artcentrica in late 2019. And in 2022, we have founded the startup, and we have participated to a lot of acceleration programs. We have raised the interest of some investors, and last year we have had the first investment in the mother company from a social impact investment fund that is based in Italy, but the investment is devoted to the development of Artcentrica. And what we see now in the market is that, especially in the education system, there is a big opportunity because only 4% of the market has been transformed by digital, and it is a $1 trillion market. At the same time, we see that art is an opportunity for students to develop soft skills that, especially in this area where you see that AI is conquering everything that is based on art skills, are more and more needed. So we see this space of opportunity to exploit our technologies and assets in the education market, and at the same time bring a positive impact to people. First of all, students, teachers, but we also want to bring our service to the consumer market in the future.
Okay, thank you, Marco. So that leaves us about 40 minutes for questions. Sarah, you will be monitoring the questions from people who are joining the group. I don't know if there are any already, but I don't think so, right? Nope.
Sorry, I was on mute. No questions in the chat yet.
Okay, so I guess I'll jump in with a couple of questions to start. So let me ask a basic question, and I guess I'm going to address this to Carina and to Marco. So Carina, how difficult is it for a startup to find investors, to find funding? I know it's a very basic question, but I guess that's sort of at the center of what we're talking about today.
Yes. Well, I think the short answer is it depends. The longer answer is that, so like we at Art Recognition, we are an atypical startup, I would say. So first of all, our initial funding didn't come from investors actually, but from scientific projects. So shortly after we have incorporated the company, we partnered with a university, so with the Tilburg University from the Netherlands, and one of their chief scientists, he already had some previous experience with, using digital methods, so applying digital methods on art. And so we have submitted a joint project to one of the funding agencies of the European Union. So one of the Horizon 2020 projects, maybe some of them know it, and it has been accepted. And this was quite good, obviously, because it allowed us to continue developing the technology without the typical problems that early stage startups have. So we did not have to go search for investors right away. But then, of course, as the company grew, we also began to raise funds. So our first investments actually came from friends, really, so individuals whom we knew quite well, and I think that's a more typical startup route. So so we got some money from individuals that knew us and liked the idea and trusted us, obviously. Later, we also got a professional VC on board. So this initial investments that we had allowed us to develop the company, not at a very fast pace, but rather organically. However, last year we had a difficult experience, one could say. So we decided actually, to take it to the next level. So to raise a larger amount to grow the business, so really to scale it. And then we started conversations with a group of investors here in Switzerland. And we were almost closing the round. So we really had the term sheet on the table, and they backed out. So, I mean, that was extremely unpleasant, as you can imagine. But I think this tells, reflecting on the whole process, this shows, how fragile this relationship between investors and startups can become, but not just fragile, also quite disproportionate. I mean, fortunately, we were able, to find an alternative quickly. And these other parties that we have addressed were, acting fast and trusted us. So, I mean, all was good at the end. But I think these experiences that I had really shows that, this can be a very mixed process. Like either it can go well, and one can find an investor quickly, or the opposite, one can negotiate for half a year and then it can end in a blow. So I think it really also is a matter of luck a little bit, meeting the right people at the right time that also share, the same values and ethical values. So that's my view on the process in short.
Marco, what about you? What was your experience like as a creator?
Our experience is that it is more easy to raise funds if you are extremely focused on what you do, first of all. And second thing is that it varies the potentialities depending which is your country. For example, in Italy, we have not so much venture capitalist money, so we have to had to find other sources. And despite the investment that we have had from a social investment foundation, that is good, we have also raised money from grants from European project. Also from a technology district devoted to culture that is based in Rome. And moreover, we have been selected by an acceleration program called Future ED, which is Future Education, that has been launched by CDP, which is Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, the financial arm of Italian government, that has launched several verticals during the latest years. So with all these different sources, we have raised more or less €500,000, but it is not sufficient now to scale. So we are currently in fundraising, and also listening to the words of Severin and Ulli. I have also a question to them and a consideration. the fact that, for example, I didn't know the percentage that Severin mentioned, about 8-10% of the investments in the big players like Sequoia and Excel, of 8-10% devoted to creative industries. And for my knowledge, one thing that is crucial is that in a specific market, you can find a lot of investors, because investors invest in a swarm modality. So perhaps this lack of investors in creative industries, I mean specific investors in creative industries, create difficulties to startups that are in that field, because they do not recognize exactly who are the investors. At the same time, they are not part of an investment swarm. So this is my experience, and I have appreciated a lot the joyful experience of Ulli about art and technology, and I think that this approach is quite common in our creative industry field. So we must try to transform this approach in something that is reasonable for investors and usable by startups.
And we are getting some questions from other people that are watching us, but let's have Ulli and Severin answer your question first.
Ulli, you want to go ahead, or?
You can go ahead if you want.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I would agree with you that let's say tech startups in the creative industries are underrepresented in terms of venture dollars, right? I think that's a fact, and I think there is potential to attract more capital to those industries. That being said, I also do believe that the very best startups don't have a problem to raise money because they're in the creative industries. So the best startups, no matter the industry or no matter the vertical, will always have the possibility to raise funds from the best funds out there. And it's the same for me, and it's interesting because I get quite often the questions from investors in my fund, right, asking me, I mean, what are even your targets? Are there even companies which are big enough? Isn't that all too fragmented, etc.? Are there even VC cases in those verticals? And the very simple answer is yes, of course they are, and I'm investing alongside other tier 1 seed funds in Europe and from the US. And they would not invest in the first place if they don't see it to be a VC case, right? So that argument is being killed right away. But it tells a lot that what people think, right? That tech companies in the creative industries, or in general companies in the creative industries, do not have the potential to become big, right? That is a common thought or misconception. And that's also part of my mission to show that you can build big companies in that space, right? Get a better understanding of what those companies are.
Okay. Ulli, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'm close to Frankfurt. I'm looking on the skyline here, and everybody knows fintech and medtech, and there are these labels. And when you ask investors, what are you investing in? They say food, and they say these big words. But of course, never, ever in the last 3 years, I'm surrounded by angels, and I've met hundreds, anyone said CultTech. And this is why it's really good that there's an institution now promoting it, and Severin promoting it. And I just spoke last week to an angel, and he said, oh yeah, I have invested in music and an event startup. So I think it takes it takes a network, and I think it needs a community, that you have the swarm investing and some promotion here. Definitely.
Sarah, I think we're getting some questions. So
yes, I'll just go by order. So Akshay's asking, what happens after investors identify the startup entrepreneur to invest? What are the reporting requirements for startups? Who would like to answer that one?
I assume it's a question to the investors. Very simple. There is reporting requirements. I, for example, have to fulfill because I'm running a venture fund. I think it's different when you're an angel investor, for example, but I need a monthly reporting and obviously annual accounts. But I hope this answers your question. It's very simple.
Data room, and I mean, even angels in the early phase would like to be updated on a regular basis. But I think for VCs, you need to be more professional and deeper into the numbers.
Going along the same question, are the requirements different in different parts of the world or in different countries?
I think they wouldn't be more strict than they are, let's say, in the European Union. So I think what we collect from startups and information rights, basically we have in the companies. I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. Sarah?
Yeah, and also add to that, make sure VC is the right way forwards for you. I can't emphasize that enough. So then we have a question from the lovely Ruby. What are your collaborative and competitive landscapes looking like? What differentiates you? Super curious. That's quite a
So it's a vast question, but it's probably more for Carina and Marco, I imagine. So I guess you have to pitch your companies again here.
Yes, I'm happy to answer. No, actually, I mean, in the context that we are on the market, which is the the authentication of fine art, so very expensive fine art mostly. That's a very sensible point, actually, because as I was saying in the beginning, as we arrived on the market, there was what we call the traditional expertise based on human experts, or the art connoisseurs. And then there were other methods as well. So one can look at the pigments, for example, or the the canvas. So there are other things, but those chemical methods, they can't tell for sure if an art piece is by the assumed author or not. They can only tell that the pigments are from that century or so. And so because of that, when we went on the market, we were like in direct competition with the human connoisseurs. And that was a problem, actually, because like right from the beginning, their perception was that we are, trying to replace them, that we are a threat to them. And some became extremely aggressive. So it took us actually a very long time, and it's still an ongoing process, to explain to them that we're not there, to take away their jobs, but to, to supplement their work, so to enhance their knowledge, well, to collaborate, really. So, but it's difficult. Like the most, open-minded experts, they're actually working with us already. So we are combining, our respective knowledges. But some are still very, resistant and very reserved towards this technology. And that comes, I think, on top of the element that the art market itself is known as very traditional. So it's been really a big, mental barrier to overcome the fact that artificial intelligence belongs there. It's not like the pharma or the medtech where it's like easier to accept the new technologies. So it's a very slow, very difficult process, but it's moving.
What about you, Marco, to answer that question?
Yes, it is also the opportunity to mention something that I forget to mention before. So our business model is based on a subscription fee that schools and universities pay on a yearly or multi-yearly base. And 30% of that subscription fee goes back to the museums that are in partnership with us. So this business model, together with our platform, which is proprietary based on our technologies, and since a few months also powered with AI, is something that is creating a new experience or a new learning experience and teaching experience. So these are the differentiating aspects of our proposal.
Okay. Sarah, any more questions?
One more. Are any of you familiar with what some call the art fintech industry? there are major developments in the art finance industry, which is expanding rapidly, thanks in particular to technological innovations. And that is actually one of our pillars, that we want everything to be more financially rewarding for all. So
Okay.
I think that's, does anyone know art fintech?
So I could answer that question perhaps. So I have a potential answer. So I think there is a trend nowadays, at least on the fine art market, which I know better than others, to buy fractionalized art. So there are some companies nowadays that are some kind of stock exchanges, if you will, where you can trade like, I don't know, a 1% of a Picasso. And then, you know, you can hope that the price will grow and then you can sell it and so on. So maybe this goes along the lines of the fintech market that you have noticed, that you have mentioned. But I think it's actually more fin than art. I mean, it's really like, it's about like making money, you know, from trading art, and not necessarily like collecting, you know, or having like any kind of like emotional attachment to art. So it's just another asset, if you will, in this respect.
Does anybody else want to answer that question? No?
Regarding that, if I can add only one comment regarding the tokenization of art, as it is called. Perhaps it is also in line with the attitude of young generations to not need to have a physical asset, the property of a physical asset, or the entire asset. So it is something more perhaps close to the younger generations and to their habits. I think that there will be an evolution also in that kind of market. So tokenization is one thing. The financial gains that you can have with that kind of property is an important aspect, but also being part of a community in that case play an important role.
Thank you. Sarah, any more questions?
Yeah, well, this is a great question. We get asked this quite a lot, and actually you just inspired a blog post that we'll be writing, where we'll be interviewing you, Severin, shortly, because I think this is what everybody wants to know. Is there a specific set of questions you'd like to ask startup teams to ensure they know their market, business model, and road to growth profitability? And this is exactly what we address on Accelerator, just to plug that one more time.
Okay. So, oh, sorry.
Yeah, so it's a question for Severin.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah. I think the short answer is no. I don't have a specific set of questions. Having done hundreds and hundreds of conversations with founders, I think in the very first conversation with founders, I really try to get to know the founders and what is their motivation, what led them to found the company they are founding, and what is their background. So really, like typically the majority of the call for me is like to figure out or to get to know the founders, and for me to answer the question, do I believe that these founders have what it takes to build a big company, or to make that a big company, and to execute on their vision. And because I mean, as I said earlier, right, I'm doing really early stage investing, which is pre-seed and seed, and the majority of my conviction when investing in companies is the team. It's the team, and everything else follows. And obviously the market is important, and the business model is important, and the road to growth and profitability is all important, and it's also the tech is important. But the most important part is the conviction in the team that they can build a venture-sized company at the end of the day. So yeah, I think I don't know if this answers your question, but I can only emphasize the importance of the team, specifically in the first conversations, because it's all about to get to know them.
I'd also like to hear Ulli on this topic, because startup by definition is a company designed to grow fast and often requires substantial funding from investors. So how do you help them? Are you like an investor relations manager, or how do they need that kind of help, you find?
So you're referring to the role at CultTech, right?
Yes, exactly.
So,
to get back to what we were talking about.
So I'm actually reaching out to angel investors right now in my network, out of my network, and try to get them to the pitch day in November at the summit. So that's one thing, and I try to understand what they're interested in, and if somebody, let's say, says they like performing arts and there's or classical music, I can match them directly, but I'm not I'm trying to guide the angels in that direction, but I'm at the end, it's them to make the decision to come to the summit, to watch it online. It's a hybrid model, and get them excited in general for the topic. But I'm not representing the single startups and try to find investors for them.
Okay. Sarah, can we have more questions?
Yeah, we do. Oh, a few more just came through as well. Scott's asking, how do you approach Euro funders and angels as an American corporation?
Okay, now lots of people can answer that one, I suppose. Marco, maybe you?
We have had some experience with US. We have participated to an acceleration program called Accelerate Italy. And in that specific case, we have been asked to set up a legal entity in the US for receiving funds from US. This happened a couple of years ago. It was during the COVID. I think that this aspect is changing now, and I think that US funds are coming to Europe to make investments. So my experience is this one, but perhaps in the past it was crucial to have a legal entity in the US. Now perhaps it is a preferred option, but not mandatory.
Severin or Ulli, you want to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. I think in short, the same rules apply, right? I think the only thing which you should make sure as a US corporation is when you're talking to funds, are they able to invest in the US? Quite often have very strict rules, especially when they have government funding or public funds in there, like the European Investment Fund. So I think that's something you should clarify in the very beginning, and more like on the soft skill side of things. US founders typically have a different style of pitching than European founders. US founders are better in like sharing their vision and being more bold and let's say it's bolder in their statement than typically the European founders. And you might want to adapt your pitch a bit in Europe when talking to very European investors, let's put it like this, right? Who have not so much exposure to US founders.
Sort of
Could I chip in with a question, if I may, to Severin, regarding to the comment that you just made? What would be your preferred, style of pitching if you were to choose, like the American one or the European one?
I mean, being a European, I probably prefer the European, but yeah, I wouldn't say I prefer the European style. My personal experiences with the European founders, quite often you might want to push them to be more visionary, and with the American founders, you might always deduct a bit from what they are pitching and telling you, and quite often when you compare two companies at the same stage, you feel like the US player has much more to offer, much more to sell than the European player. But in terms of talent, right, they are equal, right, quite often. And I don't want to say this is a very simplified message or statement which I'm doing here now. Obviously, this is not the standard rule, but it's just a very subjective impression.
Thank you.
Hopefully this is a positive for globalization now, though, because I always think if you put Europe and you put the US together, we would make the perfect mix for like the balance of what you need in a pitch.
I mean, I think it's highly interesting that there are differences at all, right? I mean, even in Europe, you can see difference between British founders and French founders and German founders. So how people pitch and present and tell stories differs quite a lot, and it's quite interesting to observe that.
Yeah, but it's just so, you know, Americans are so out there and the Europeans are so conservative. It's just like, come on, guys, let's just push each other together. It will make a perfect blend. Anyway, we have one more question here. Bruno is saying, my recent experience with investors led me to realize that investors are pretty reluctant to trust B2C startups nowadays because of the acquisition cost of users. Is that true?
Who wants to answer that? I guess it's Severin again, who will probably have to answer.
Actually, I'd like to take the
Carina,
chance to share my experience, if I may. Sorry for cutting.
Please do.
Yeah. No, I would actually say that it's exactly the opposite, in fact, from my experience, because, you know, like B2C business brings more revenues naturally. So, I mean, of course, it is more difficult, you know, B2B business. It's more difficult, like to get like a big, you know, company or big projects. But I think it also depends like very much on the type of market that you are looking at. Like if you are going into mass business, you know, and you want to sell something like to millions of people, then of course you want to get the B2C, you know. Whereas if you are a product that's tailored like on a company or on an institution, then you might want to get the B2B. So I think it's really both. But I'll let Severin maybe to tell his view, or Ulli to tell his view on this, their view on this.
Or Ulli, I think, wants to say something.
I think the investors, the angel investors, are totally colorful and they're so different. There's like, there's former startup owners that exited and made a lot of money, and then there's these retired people that want to have a few investments and help with their network. So some want to coach, some don't want to help. I mean, they just want to invest and spread money. So I think it also depends if you touch with your topic, you know, their interest. And I think if you go very analytically in it, you say, oh, it has to be a SaaS company, it has to be B2B, a huge market, it has to be unicorn. But a lot of these investments are just coming from the heart, and they like the founders, and they want to help with their network, with their skill set, and they want a personal fit and help these young founders. So it really depends, I would say. It's not such a clear black and white answer.
Severin, you wanted to also add something?
Yeah, I agree. The simple answer is no. Obviously, B2C startups are equally interesting than B2B startups. They both have the difficulties and challenges, and user acquisition is obviously a big topic for both, right? But obviously for consumer companies, this is like one of the big questions. And if anyone tells you that consumer companies are not being funded, I would say it's total bullshit. I mean, obviously topics come in waves, right? And different models come in waves. You might remember there was all these random scooter companies suddenly popping up, or all these random grocery delivery companies popping up. So some models come in waves, and they might be in the B2B or the B2C sector, but B2C is always there and will always be there, right? And the biggest companies at the end of the day are consumer companies, right? I mean, obviously they also developed B2B offerings, but if you think of the big tech companies, excluding Nvidia now, and the B2B offerings of Amazon and Google, etc., but typically they got big with consumer models.
So there's no magical business model, is what you're saying?
No, not at all.
Sarah, any more questions?
Yeah, this is another one for Severin from Tim. Can you put a rough number on venture-sized businesses?
I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but I'm guessing what you mean is, what is a venture-sized business? What do I mean by when I say venture-sized business? I think the answer is as a venture fund, when you invest in a company, you need to believe that this company potentially can become a fund returner. Otherwise, from a business model perspective of a venture fund, it doesn't make sense to invest in that company. Because otherwise the venture model doesn't work. Simple. So with every investment I do from the fund, I need to believe that this investment can become a venture-sized company. And that typically puts, in my fund, it's a small fund, but that typically puts a 50 million plus enterprise valuation on it. And actually even more. So let's say 100 million enterprise valuation at exit is what I need to believe that this company can become. And for bigger funds, that's obviously much bigger, right? If you have like a $1 billion fund, when you invest in a company, you need to believe that this company can at least become a unicorn or bigger. I hope this answers the question.
Carina, that's something that you kind of I wanted to discuss today also, is to talk about how sometimes smaller companies you feel don't get the recognition that they deserve. So when you hear Severin talking, what's your reaction?
Well, I mean, Severin is not the first and certainly not the last, you know, to mention this topic. But I do believe that there is some kind of I don't know what to call it, you know, a misconception, perhaps, you know, that there are these superstars, you know, the founders that are raising like tens of or hundreds of millions, and they create like companies that are worth 50 billion or I don't know. And I mean, that's all okay. But I think that's a bit difficult because this generates an element of like anxiety for the potential founders who have like really brilliant ideas. You know, they are very smart, very energetic, but they don't dare perhaps to create a company because they are afraid that, you know, if they don't raise 20 million, they're going to fail. And I think this is a bit of like a problem of us as a community, even the startup community, you know, that this like cases of like big investments, they are celebrated, you know, they are all over the, I don't know, internet, so to speak. Whereas smaller companies that are still very successful by bootstrapping themselves, you know, or by, you know, raising smaller amounts, like Ulli said, you know, some people, you know, some old people that are just investing from their heart and because they want to help, and they don't necessarily look for their like 100x or so. So I think this is like a perfectly, you know, viable business model that can lead to like fantastic results, you know, like the momentum builds. It's a bit slower for sure, but it's also less risky, you know, like you're not going to fail really big if you fail at all. I mean, it takes more time, but the sort of difficulty that I have is that there isn't like a lot of acknowledgement, you know, for this kind of business models. Like everybody's talking about those who like raise a lot and then they explode and go through the roof and so on. But in my opinion, I think we need to talk about this alternative too, you know, that one can make it with smaller investors, maybe with just some business angels, also with some like research funding like we did, and just by, you know, earning some money relatively early, you know, and then be mindful with the budget and all of these things. And so I think it's important, you know, to make the point that works too, you know, and not just like raising tens and hundreds of millions.
100% agree.
Thank you.
That's what I tell a lot of founders actually. That the problem is that we only read about the venture cases in the media, right? If you go on TechCrunch or Sifted or whatever. Exactly. You don't read about all the other successful companies, and success has a very broad definition, right? And not every company is a venture company, and not every founder wants to build a venture company. And I think we need to be very clear about this and very open about this. And as you just rightfully said, for example, as a business angel, I do have a different business model, right? I don't need 100x. If I invest as a business angel 50, 100K in a company, I'm super happy if this is a 2, 3, 4x, right? And for this, it doesn't have to be a venture case. So there's different financing models which are out there, and I think we should definitely embrace that. Yeah.
Yes, and especially if I might add a last remark, in today's market, which is known to be quite dry. I mean, one hears like from many founders that they have like trouble, finding some investment for their companies. I think this is really like a model that maybe we need to promote a bit more, like not to discourage these people and tell them like, hey, it works, like even if you don't get like a big investment, you can still make it.
Okay, Sarah, do we have any more questions? We have about 5 more minutes.
Okay, we have a couple more. So just quickly on Scott's follow-up from his previous question, I assume this is for you, Severin. Do you invest in US corporations or prefer European? Like, what's your preference generally?
I do invest in Delaware Incs., yes, but I only focus geographically on Europe. So I want to have the teams being based in Europe or the value creation in Europe. But quite often they run Delaware Incs. Because for future fundings, etc. So yeah.
Okay, and the last question: do creative business think game studios or immersive art concepts fit the traditional VC form of funding, or does the funding model need adapting? And if so, how?
That's for Severin as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to give it a try. I think it's a great question. I mean, game studios also have the potential to become very, very big, right? I personally, I don't dare to invest in game studios. I stay away from it just because I feel I don't have the necessary level of information or access of information to judge which game studio is the next big hit. It's a bit like investing in artists, right? And betting who is the next big artist. And it's the same with gaming studios. So I do believe there are specialized funds doing that, investing in game studios or publishers. And there's definitely investors out there who have a better understanding of this and a better access and better level of information. And with immersive art concepts, it's probably in most of the cases not the VC fit, and that's something where the question is, and that's what I tried to explain earlier, right? The business model of VCs has to work out, and so they always are dependent on the big outliers and breakout companies. And the question is that possible with immersive art concepts? I think that would be my view on it. But that being said, I think there is a lot of very, very exciting stuff happening exactly on that intersection.
Okay. That's it. No more questions.
That's it.
I think we're going to conclude on that one. I really want to thank everybody for this extremely lively discussion. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for those of you watching us. And you will be able to see this conversation on our YouTube channel in the next few days. That's the ArtTech YouTube channel. And please mark in your calendar the ArtTech Prize and Conference, which will take place in Munich on October 9th through the 11th. The event is free, but you have to register, and which you can do on the ArtTech website. And registrations are open already, and it should be an extremely interesting event. Thank you all for your attention, and I hope to see you very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.